Have you ever wondered about how the United States expanded on the North American continent? Neither have I, but that's besides the point. We're going from the recognition of the United States as a whole all the way to the War of 1812. Hey, let me see that real quick, bro. Anyway, following a major win from George Washington in the Revolutionary War, Great Britain recognized the United States as an independent nation through the Treaty of Paris, which was also signed in 1783. After the treaty, our first governmental system was the Articles of Confederation, but is short-lived and served until 1789.
And now it's time for our open letter. Let's see, which one is this about? It's to the U.S. It's the Treaty of Paris of 1783. Let's read a little bit about it. To forget all past misunderstandings and differences that have unhappily interrupted the good correspondence and friendship which they mutually wish to restore. Wow, this is a super important article and everything all about it. This ended the Revolutionary War and helped start the two countries on good terms. The Articles of Confederation, otherwise known as the AOC, happened before the Treaty of Paris of 1783. It took effect in the year 1777. It gave lots of power to the states and not enough power to the federal government. Of course, the American people didn't realize this at first. They just came from the oppressive power of the crown, so this seemed like the right solution. But after such conflicts as Shays' Rebellion, the Founding Fathers and the American people realized that the AOC didn't have the critical powers that it needed. One of these being the ability to tax, which would raise money for the military, which would protect not only the nation as a whole, but the people from the people.
After the American people realized the Article of Confederation needed a stronger federal government, it led to the Constitutional Convention of 1787. After the convention, the Founding Fathers decided on a new form of government, which was called the Constitution, and it is the present form of government we use today.
Thank you very much, George. As you can see, the U.S. got tired of the Articles of Confederation. But with this new U.S. Constitution, it finally allowed America to be governed the way they desired. The Constitution created laws for the U.S. government to follow. The Constitution is the supreme law of the United States. It was written in 1787 and established framework for the federal government. The Constitution outlines the structure and the powers of the three branches of government: the legislative, executive, and judicial branch. It also protects individual rights and freedoms such as freedom of speech, religion, and the press. The Constitution has been amended 27 times. The first 10 amendments are also known as the Bill of Rights. These amendments guarantee important rights such as the right to bear arms, the right to a fair trial, the right to privacy. The Constitution is a vital document that helped shape the United States into the country it is today.
Many delegates of the United States disagreed on the form of representation for the United States. They couldn't decide if they wanted a House and Congress, or the amount of representatives was based on population, which could probably fit on this big old forehead, or if they should all be the same. So they did both. These are now known as the House of Representatives and the Senate.
Let's talk about slavery and the Three-Fifths Compromise. The Three-Fifths Compromise was made by James Wilson because the South wanted slaves to count towards votes, but the North wanted slaves to just count as taxation. So James Wilson made the compromise saying 3 out of every 5 slaves would count as a vote, and slaves would count towards taxation, easing the tension between the non-slave states and the slave states.
Yes, Drew, I agree. All this slavery made people want land, but what do you do with that land? Well, quite frankly, you expand. That's the big word for today. Of course, slavery wasn't the only reason the U.S. people wanted to expand. The The West had resources, and lots of it. It was full of opportunities, and the American people wanted a part of it. Even George Washington knew expansion wasn't inevitable.
Speaking of Washington, the man was widely loved, but not everyone loved his policies. One of these being the whiskey tax, which led to the Whiskey Rebellion. This was when many Pennsylvania farmers didn't like the whiskey tax and decided to rebel against it. It was created by Alexander Hamilton and signed and enforced by Washington. It lasted from 1791 to 1794. This was recognized as the first tax on domestic goods.
Washington was getting tired of these farmers rebelling, so as a response, Washington led his army to go confront these farmers and convince them that this rebellion is pointless, that they should just end the rebellion before anything happened. This was the first representation of the executive branch's power to enforce laws.
I feel you, Drew. But after Washington and Adams' presidency, Jefferson came into office in 1801 as the third president of the U.S. During Jefferson's presidency, he was able to make a deal with Napoleon in which Jefferson was able to make the Louisiana Purchase. The Louisiana Purchase was very important because we would have to pay taxes to use the port of New Orleans before. But with the Louisiana Purchase, we were able to use the port for free without having to pay anything, which let the U.S. citizens move more west to make trading faster and better.
Although the Louisiana Purchase was made by the U.S., we didn't technically own the land because the Native Americans were still living on it. Of course, Thomas Jefferson and the American people were not about to let that stop them.
Once we figured out what was out in the Great Plains of the U.S., the American people started moving out west. They coexisted with the Native Americans to an extent. Some peacefully lived with them while others wanted them out of their way of expansion. Just like the Americans, some natives were friendly while others weren't. Many of the natives feared expansion of the Americans. They killed anyone who trespassed over their territory. A great example of this was what I said before about the kidnapping and almost killing of Lewis Clark in Sacagawea.
So I see, Drew. Thank you. And on to our thought bubble. The War of 1812 was a military conflict between the United States and Great Britain. It began in 1812 and lasted until 1815. The war was primarily fought over British maritime rights, including practice of impressment. The war was also fought over territorial disputes in North America. The war solidified America's independence and established the United States as a major world power.
What was better, the War of 1812 or the Madison War?
The War of 1812.
Did you know they were the exact same thing?
No, I did not.
Alright.
Who am I here with? Carter. And whose journey was better, Lewis or Clark's?
Honestly, Clark's journey was way better.
Alright, appreciate it.
Of course.
What if I told you they were the same journey, though?
No.